Welcome back to my round 4 recap from Vegas. I'm realizing that I've had no time to shave. I'm growing a small beard. I've been spending all my time preparing, playing, eating, doing recaps, sleeping. Maybe at some point I'll shave, but for this game, I was playing Grandmaster Arman Mikaelyan. We both were coming into this round with 2 out of 3 points. And I did have a little bit of time to prepare before the game. And we actually went into one of the lines I was predicting after d4, d5, c4, e6 as a queen's gambit with knight to f3. And in this position, I played knight b d7. This is the so-called Barman variation. I actually don't know where this opening got its name. I think Barman is a city in Germany that maybe some like previous chess tournament was held at some point. But it's an interesting line. White has a lot of different options against this move. There's takes, there's e3, there's bishop f4, bishop g5, queen c2, g3. And before the game, I was checking out my opponent's chess.com account, and I saw that he's played almost every single option against this line. So I wasn't entirely sure what to expect, but he ended up playing the move pawn to g3, which I did very briefly check before the game. And with this move, White's going for a more Catalan type of setup and not looking to develop the bishop the more natural way. So after g3, the most principled approach is to take the pawn, because I know that this bishop is not going to try and recapture on c4. So he plays bishop g2, and this is still theory. I play c6. And then I was more prepared here for castling. And maybe I can show some of the lines I was prepping, but he deviated from my prep. He also deviated from what he's played before with the move pawn a4, which I was aware is a move, and I'll go into more details about this in just a moment. But I do want to show one of the cool lines I was preparing, because he had a previous game against Grandmaster Bogdan Diak that went castling pawn b5, pawn e4, and pawn b4. And there was a really cool game like e5, knight d5, knight e4, bishop e7. It was really crazy where he went like all out on the king side, ended up like sacking a piece, but Deak won with the black pieces. So I was more prepared for this type of position, which unfortunately we didn't get. So going back to what he played, pawn a4, the one thing I remembered about this move, and probably last looked at this move maybe 6, 7 years ago, I was actually remembering I helped a friend prepare for a big tournament, and we were looking at this line, and I'd seen a game between Topalov and Kasparov that was played in the year 2000. And I vaguely remembered the idea that Kasparov played. He had the black pieces of this position. And I was able to remember the next few moves from that game after bishop e7, castle, castle, e4. And in this position, Kasparov played, I think, a really important move, pawn e5. And this fights for the center. It is a temporary pawn sacrifice, but the point is after takes knight g4, very likely black will win back the pawn. My opponent defends the pawn with bishop f4, and here it's very important that black can add another attacker with the move queen a5. I should note queen c7 would attack the pawn, but that fails to pawn e6, hitting the queen. So queen a5, and this was basically the extent of my knowledge of the opening theory. Maybe I can open the Topalov-Kasparov game, because I was remembering that they drew pretty quickly. And if we just flip to that game, we can see how that game transpired. e6, take, pawn e5, and after takes, 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 queen h5, bishop d6, knight e4. They very quickly drew from this position with repeating moves, rook f5, queen e8, rook f8, and neither player wanted to fight for a win. So I had a vague memory of this perpetual, but I couldn't remember how they actually got to that position. And my game took a slightly different route. e6 was still played, which I think is the most principled move, because white is going to lose a pawn, and white might as well try and damage my structure. I take back. And rather than playing like Topalov with the move e5, my opponent played the move queen e2. And I think the idea is very simple, just hitting the pawn on c4 and maybe also preparing the move pawn e5. So I play a move to prevent both of white's threats of playing knight d e5, defending the pawn and blockading white's e-pawn. And then after takes, my opponent was still playing quickly, and he played his next move really quickly, which made me realize that he's probably still in preparation. He played the move king h1, and this is not the type of move you play quickly if you haven't studied the position before. Like, I thought the most natural move is queen takes c4, just regaining a pawn. But king h1 is really interesting, because the idea is to play f4 and not allow queen c5 with check. And white essentially wants to play f4 and e5 and get this really nice pawn chain and then free the e4 square from the knight, or maybe even the bishop, and then orchestrate a kingside attack. Yeah, I took a bit of time here trying to figure out what the best approach should be, because if white gets in these next two moves, it can get very unpleasant for black, or so I thought. So after a bit of a think, I decided that I would play a prophylactic move to try and discourage f4, and that move was pawn to g5. And this move looks a little bit over the top at first, like I'm pushing the pawn in front of my castle king, but I thought that if I can prevent f4 and my queen can stay on e5, then it's not easy for white to activate the minor pieces, because this e4 pawn is blockaded and it restricts the knight and the bishop. So I was trying to play in just a more preventive manner here, and I thought that even though I'm creating air around my king, it's not so easy for white to immediately attack. Now, little did I know, we're still following a lot of like top level games. There was a game between Gelfand and Grishuk that had the same position, and we continue to follow that game. Gelfand played rook a d1, and so did my opponent. And then in this position, I played the move pawn to b5, which I thought is the most natural, to hold on to my c-pawn and maybe try and eventually have some life for this bishop. The problem, though, is if I ever play bishop b7, there's rook d7. So it's hard to actually complete development on the queen side. But I thought at least I'm holding on to the queenside pawns. And then my opponent plays a move pawn to f4. So this is by far the most concrete move. And we're still following the game between Gelfand and Grishuk. And I didn't know it at the time, but I'm playing all the moves that Grishuk is playing. Now f4, it's a very sharp move because it is a pawn sacrifice. So after takes, I'm currently up 2 pawns. But after takes, if we look at the position, white definitely has a lot of compensation, given that my bishop pair isn't so impressive, my king's very open, and the g and f files are open as well. So there's ideas of rook f1 or rook g1. White has also ideas of e5. And my opponent played the move pawn e5 in this position. This is where I deviate from the game between Gelfand and Grishuk. Apparently, Grishuk played the move rook b8. Now, I actually played the top engine move in this position. I haven't had a chance to look so closely with the engine, but I know that the top engine move was pawn b4, because after the game, I caught the live commentary on my Twitch channel with Jonathan Trance, and he was praising this move, that this probably gives black the most chances to fight back.
Oh, he does play b4. He's incredible. Wait, he's better than 2700s.
But I took some time. Like we can see, I went from 53 minutes down to 37 minutes. So I was really deciding between mainly b4 and rook b8, trying to see which move just creates the most chances for black. And I like the move b4 because it hits the knight, and if the knight moves, then there's lines where e5 can be hanging. So here my opponent played an in-between move. Rather than moving the knight, he took on c6, counterattacking my rook. I had nothing else to do, then moved to b8. And then he plays the move knight e4. And this is just a really crazy position. And during the game, I realized it's a very difficult position for black to play because white's just so active with the pieces, and there's so many resources to try and calculate from the black side with rook f1, rook g1, queen h5, knight f6, knight d6, even some bishop e8 ideas, or other lines where the bishop comes back to e4 and h7 gets attacked. So it was a very difficult position to play because any move I consider, I have to look at like so many different options that white can play. And ultimately, I decided on capturing the pawn, and this turned out to be a really big mistake because I completely overlooked white's idea in this position. Now, apparently, I had two moves to keep equality according to the engine. The two moves I should have chose between were king h8 or c3, but yeah, from a human perspective, I think it's very difficult to arrive at either of these moves. Although king h8 makes sense to get off the g file, maybe in a different world I would find this move. But after queen takes e5, the mistake that I made in my thought process was that I assumed this knight is restricted on e4 because my bishop on e7 is very nicely placed to control all the squares the knight can move forward. What I didn't realize is white has a brilliant tactical idea in this position, which I'm pretty sure my opponent probably saw when he took the pawn on e4. But the idea is after rook g1, king h8, and I should note that very shortly after I took the pawn on e5, I realized what was coming. But the idea is really nice, and if you want to try and find it, feel free to pause the video. This is white to move and find just an amazing crushing move. But without further ado, the move is knight to g5, and here white can say, "Oh no, my queen." But if I take the queen, then it's mate. And yeah, I realized I'm in trouble here because knight f7 is a mate threat and a forking threat. And on top of that, my queen's attacked, and there's really no great options here. I ended up playing queen f5 in the game, and this just walks into queen e5. And this is another, "Oh no, my queen." And I was thinking of shouting out, "Someone call an ambulance for me," because I'm just getting thrashed in this position. I decided to take the queen and allow my opponent to deliver the beautiful fork checkmate. What to do? It was a rough finish, but a brilliant game for my opponent to sacrifice two pawns and then sacrifice a queen twice to get just a very strong mating attack. And just to note, if I play a move like king g8, then my rook is hanging. There's so many discovered checks. Yeah, the black is not surviving here. And also just to show, if I would have played queen g7, then there's still queen e5. So basically, wherever I would have moved my queen, queen e5 is coming. And yeah, I just have no escape because my rook's attacked, knight f7 still a threat, and again, if takes, then checkmate. So it was a rough game. I think there's a lot of lessons to take away from this game, mainly the fact that if I go into such a sharp line, I should really be more thoroughly prepared. Like remembering prep from so many years ago did not quite cut it. But then also just having the sense of danger too. Like I really should have seen the idea of queen e5 and eventual knight g5 before I actually took the poison pawn. So anyway, yeah, can't be too upset. I'm currently 2 out of 4. I've beaten the lower rated players. I lost to 2 grandmasters. Been on the losing side of some very nice games from these strong grandmasters. So the next round starts in 2.5 hours. So it's time to get some food. Thanks so much if you made it this far. Be sure to check out my Twitch channel. Jonathan Trantz is doing live commentary for the morning games. I'm not sure when this recap will be posted, but just go to twitch.tv/IamRosen to check it out. Also, I have a merch coupon code Vegas to save on merch. Links will be in the description. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys soon.